Welcome everyone to another Sunday Wisdom session. And the topic for this evening is on being silent. And this is an inspiring quality of a seeker of truth, of a devotee of God. And the basis behind it, why silence, the quality being Mauni, Mauni meaning being silent, it encompasses the whole spiritual path. It is about quietening the mind. It is about dissolving the ego. And you will find in each of these qualities, this dissolution of the ego and movement towards the truth, the self, the spirit, God, is what they have in common. And what is inspiring about this quality is that it offers guidance as well as a picture of what we want to achieve. So we begin, as we do with all our sessions, diving into an analysis, a definition. What is silence? As a concept, what does it mean? The word.
Absence of noise.
Absence of noise. So it is the absence of speech, absence of sound, absence of noise. But when we say this, it's relative. Silence and sound, it's relative. In fact, for any sound, in order to hear it, you need the medium of silence. If you don't have silence, you cannot hear the sound. So if you can imagine a sound wave, for you to perceive that particular sound wave, it has to be on the medium of quietude, less sound. And it's not that we hear everything. It's only the range that human beings are capable of hearing. But there are different types of silences. So our silence is not perfect silence, the absence of sound. That's only external silence. But if you examine what is the other type of noise that we experience? Thoughts. This is the noise in our mind. Exactly.
Keeping our mind calm.
Keeping our mind calm. So it is the noise in our heads, the noise in our personality, and those are the desires of the mind. It creates the noise, it creates the agitation. So we've got internal noise as well. So silence on the internal sense would mean the mind being at peace. Again, it's relative. How agitated? Less agitated. How much sound? Less sound. So if we are less agitated, we are closer towards the medium of peaceful mind, silence. Is there another silence? And the absolute silence that Vedanta talks about is the silence of the pure consciousness. It is the substratum on which thought exists. And without that substratum, just as sound needs silence, thought needs pure consciousness for it to exist. We don't experience the pure consciousness because there's always noise. We never see the substratum. We never see the base. We never experience the absolute silence because of the ever-present thoughts in our personality. Just as perhaps we never experience quietude because of all the noise around us in the environment. So in our discussion this evening, we're going to discuss at these three different levels. So the first is the external silence. which is often called vachika, mauna. Mauna means silence, vachika is speech. So the silence of speech. But we're going to take that to mean the silence of the outside world. Then we go a little bit closer, and then it's the manasa, the mind. Manasa mauna, which is the silence of the mind. Is the mind at peace? Is the mind at rest? And then the absolute silence, the paramarthika, which is the supreme reality, the silence of the pure consciousness. So let's go one by one. And as mentioned in the beginning, the beautiful part of this quality is that it presents the goal, absolute silence, but also the way to get to the goal. By being silent, you hit silence. So by practicing silence, you move towards the pure silence. So let's start with the first one. In this class, I had half a mind to start the class saying that the quality is being silent. And then for the rest of the class, I would just keep quiet. I'm not sure how many of you would stay online. I would just be quiet. Ramana Maharishi, he says, silence is the highest teaching. There is so much communicated in the absence of speech, in the absence of sound. But we're not ready for it. We're not ready yet for that. We need sound to reach silence. Okay. In fact, there was a composition by a great composer. His name was John Cage. And one of his compositions was called 433. Has anybody heard of this? And what he does in this composition, they've got three different aspects, three different parts in the concerto. And for 4 minutes, 33 seconds, no instrument. Nobody touches the instrument. Can you imagine sitting in silence for 4 minutes, 33 seconds? And the full orchestra is there. And they have other pieces as well, no doubt. But this particular piece, it is the absence of sound. And there's a little bit of ambient music, but the whole idea is absence of sound is music as well. Everything is music. What an idea. The same thing here. Let's examine. We fill our lives up with noise. From the moment we wake up, we're experiencing noise in terms of music, in terms of our alarm, in terms of calls, in terms of perhaps you live in a busy city. We experience all this noise. And even when we have an opportunity to be by ourselves, what do we do?
Read.
We read.
We're on social media, we're on Netflix.
Mhm.
Again, just a lot of noise.
A lot of noise. Reading is a relatively introvert activity. So I'm thinking more about we watch, we consume noise. We listen to podcasts, we listen to, and I'm not saying stop listening to the Vedanta classes or to your e-learning, but I'm saying create some times of quietude, of peace, of absence of sound. Why? Because what these spaces in our life does, when we create silence externally now, is it gives us a chance to pause. It gives us an opportunity to reflect. It gives us an opportunity to see our mind. So it prepares the ground for working on inner silence. So the external silence is the conducive environment for reflection. so that we can start looking at our own thoughts. But unfortunately, because of our desires, we are extrovert. Our attention goes towards noise. And we spoil it straight away. How? We want to talk. We want to speak. We want to put things in our ears. Can you be entertained in your own company? Even without a book, Dario, without music, without watching a movie, can you spend time with yourself? And that is the real test of your self-sufficiency. Can you enjoy your own company? Or is your mind so agitated it needs constant distraction? It needs noise. And this is the phenomenon of why music has changed over the eras. So if you go back, let's say, 100 years, 150 years, 200 years, what was the music like? And you got to unmute.
Classical.
It was classical. It was anything else? How would you define the music?
Quiet.
It was quiet.
Maybe there is no music at all.
No music at all? No, there was music. 150 years ago, there was music.
Pleasant.
Yeah.
Melodious.
Melodious. So it was soft, it was gentle, it was melodious. Ballroom dancing, classical dancing, you had the soft music. And the reason why the music was at that tempo was because the mind was relatively peaceful. So music would be the sound, and the difference, the disparity between the mind and the sound, and you get some peace. You get some entertainment. But now to entertain the mind, what happens is the mind gets more and more agitated, and this is what we're seeing. The mind starts getting louder and louder. So if you are going to quieten the mind, you would need something louder than the mind to not experience the agitations that the mind is going through. So the more agitated the mind, the louder, the more unmelodious, the more chaotic the sound has to be. In fact, when a mind is so agitated, this is where people need some extremity outside. It could even be in the form of harming themselves, because that outside strong provocation, strong agitation or hurt or pain, the disparity makes the mind look peaceful, temporarily, of course. But this is what we're doing. We are looking for expressions to find peace, but we're looking in the wrong place. The way to go about it is not by drowning the mind with more noise. It is about setting the right environment and getting the knowledge to go introvert, to make the mind quieter. So let's start with, firstly, our necessity to talk. Because as soon as we talk, silence from our side is broken. Why do we speak?
To communicate.
To
Yeah.
communicate? Okay.
Or make a point.
To make a point. Okay. I have a desire to make a point. I want to be heard. I want to give my opinion.
It's ego driven.
It's ego driven. If you look at those phrases that I just used, I want to give, I have a point, I have something to say. It's all ego driven. You're highlighting the ego. It doesn't mean that you don't speak, but it's questioning the need to speak. Plato, he says, The wise talk because they have something to say. So there's something that is to be communicated for the benefit of those who are asking. So it's not that they just saying it, they have something meaningful to say. What's the opposite of that? Fools talk because they have to say something. Means they have to give their opinion. The wise, it's the other way around. It's when they have something valuable, they contribute. The fool, whether they have something valuable or not, they must put in their input. Now, which one are we? When we have nothing to contribute in a conversation or on a topic, do we have to give an opinion? Do we feel left out? And this is where we start examining ourselves. Do we necessarily have to talk all the time? Do we have to speak? Do we have to give our autobiography to every person that we meet? Not necessary. And when we do meet up with a friend, what is usually the conversation topic? Don't say Vedanta.
About me.
About me? Okay.
What I am doing, what they are doing,
But what I'm doing,
someone else is doing.
what someone, okay.
Yeah, gossiping.
We're gossiping. Mhm. Most popular pastime, talking about others. Socrates gives us a triple filter test. It says, look, before you speak, check. Just check if you need to speak. And the way you can do this check before we enter into gossip or we entertain into that kind of conversation topic, first check, is it true? Is it good? Is it useful? A student wanted to tell Socrates something, and he says, Socrates, I've got some really juicy news for you. It's about one of our fellow professors. And Socrates asked him these questions. Is it true? And he's saying, look, I'm not sure. I heard it from someone. Okay, so that's out. Is it good? It's definitely not good. It's a scandal. Okay, out. Is it useful at least? No, it's not useful. It's just entertainment. I don't want to hear it. And if you're on the other side, I don't need to say it. There is a concept in chapter 17 of the Bhagavad Gita where it talks about tapaha, which means austerity. And we spoke about it. We covered it as one of the qualities in our study. And austerity means conserving energy, not allowing it to be wasted on unproductive channels, but at the same time, channelizing that energy into something positive. All right, so austerity is being very careful with your energy. And they put austerity under a few aspects. There's austerity of speech, and there's austerity of mind, and austerity of body. All right, so representing word, thought, and action. And under austerity of speech, what do you say? The quality that they give is satyam. Is it truthful? Is it taking you to the truth? And if it's not truthful or it's not taking you to the truth, practice Mauni. Be silent. Otherwise, the moment we speak, we are consolidating this ego. We're expressing desire. We're moving away from the self, the spirit. Khalil Gibran, he says, why do we talk? You talk when you cease to be at peace with your thoughts. So you speaking reveals your extroversion, reveals your desire because you're initiating why you're going into it. Now, no doubt the desire could be something positive, could be unselfish, could be actually taking you towards the truth. The point of hesitating or being silent is to examine that intention. Go deep. And what we'll find is there is so much energy we can save from frivolous, unproductive speech. Therefore, Lord Ganesha, you know Lord Ganesha? Johan, you've seen? Cute guy. Yeah. The god with the elephant head. Lord Ganesha is worshipped as a symbol of a person of wisdom. Why? Because he's got large ears. Elephant head. Large ears. Why? Because he can listen. Because that's how we gain wisdom. We gain wisdom from listening. But when you speak, you don't gain wisdom. You say what you know. And therefore, the elephant, small mouth, relatively. Big ears, small mouth. William Shakespeare says the same thing. Give every man thine ear, give every man thine ear, but few thy voice. Be careful. Be discreet. Use your intellect to decide when to speak, when not to speak. And if you speak, make sure it's coming from the right place. So now this is the external aspect. And one more aspect that was covered in the external is something Swamiji taught us. And we would have group discussions in the evening, usually around 6 p.m. or 6:45 p.m. And one group discussion, it was at 6 p.m. And that day, Swamiji came at 5:30. The group discussion's at 6:30, at 6 p.m. And Swamiji comes in at 5:30. He's there before all the students. And he's sitting down at his desk. There are no students yet. The students start coming in by, let's say, 5:45. They start coming in. And they're not late, but they're not very early either. So Swamiji's sitting and he's watching the students come in one by one. And of course, the students are horrified that the guru, the teacher, is there before him. And so the word starts going around and people start passing on the message that Swamiji is already there. And then people start rushing, getting ready quicker, and it reaches the hostels and people are coming in for the lecture. And Swamiji is just watching. He's watching the rush. He's watching people coming in. He's seeing who came early, who is rushing because they got the message that he's there. And he's just watching. And the students don't know what this is about. So they're in suspense. What is Swamiji going to say? They're waiting. Swamiji also keeping quiet. And then he said, our whole life, people are rushing from experience to experience. If you come early, you can enjoy the silence. Get into a place of calm. Enjoy it. But what we do is either we just reach on time or we're late. But imagine if we had this approach in everything that we did in our life, just a few minutes early before whatever activity, whether it is catching a plane or a bus or an appointment, going there and just being quiet, watching, observing. listening. What will that do for your mental frame? What will that do for your mind before a meeting? And we don't give ourselves an opportunity to experience possible peace. So I'm starting with the external. At least create opportunities in our day. And it could be those few minutes before you take a next meeting or you take the next call of just some quiet, some shut off. And then, of course, engage. What a thought. All the time rushing. This is external silence. Internal silence, manasa mauna, is you can be quiet outside. And you could be in a quiet place. You could be at the academy. But your mind is racing. Your mind has so much of thoughts. And we experience this sometimes when we're at home, we're in our bed, it's quiet, but the mind is active. And this is a different type of noise. So the sound from the external environment is not there, but our mind is noisy. We used to practice this quality where on a Wednesday morning in the academy, the students going through the residential course, from the time they wake up, so 4:15 in the morning till 11 a.m. All right, so just 7 hours, that we would try and practice keeping externally quiet. We would practice mauna. Okay, vachika mauna. All right, so the silence of speech. And what do you think would happen at breakfast, or when you passed another student, or when you were in the corridor? Sign language is going on.
Mind will start talking.
Mind will start talking. So the mind is looking for an opportunity. So even though you go to the dining hall, everybody's sitting there in silence, each one is looking at the other. What's the other person doing? So the mind is active. The mind is not quiet. The mind is looking. So, people who don't usually communicate are communicating non-verbally. So you're not really being silent. You're not really practicing this. And, we did it for many, many years. And at some point we said, look, if people are not using the opportunity, it's a mockery. And we stopped it. So we stopped this practice. If people want to be quiet, be quiet. There's plenty of opportunity. But if you feel the need so badly to communicate, why are you forcing yourself? And this was the idea. It's that we have opportunities. We've got to create it, and according to our capacity, go within. Go introvert. Try and be entertained with our own thoughts, with our own mind. Make the mind calmer. But right now, the mind is so itchy. The mind is restless. The mind has to contact the world all the time, throughout the day. Blaise Pascal, the famous French scientist, he said, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. All the issues we have is because human beings cannot sit in a room alone with themselves. So therefore what? We've got to create things. We've got to create noise. We've got to create turbulence, confrontation. Can you sit by yourself? And that does not mean you don't contact the world, but are you capable? The other way of looking at this internal silence of the mind, of your thoughts being quieter, less agitated, is what is your need? We called it introversion, extroversion, going out to the world or staying within yourself. What is your need for reaction? When you see something, when you read something, what is your need to react? Can you be free from reaction? Can you just observe? Can you watch? Can you witness? So this is called detachment objectivity, where the intellect takes a step back and just looks at the facts, looks at the situation, doesn't comment, doesn't get involved, doesn't judge, doesn't start putting labels, good, bad, sensible, silly. Just watches it. But our mind, because it's based on likes and dislikes, wants to enter the party and wants to chip in and wants to give a comment when really there is no informed opinion. Often being in the subject and sharing this wisdom over the years, people ask me about current affairs of what's happening in the world. And what is my view on what's happening in the world? What's happening in this part of the region? What do you think? What is happening with this policy? What is happening with that policy? What do you think about this president or that president? And my answer to them shocks them. I don't know. It's not my subject. And no doubt I may have read, but if you are going to comment on something, do you have both sides of the story? Have you done the research? Is your opinion measured? Because if it's not measured, if it's not informed, then what are you doing? You're doing it because, or you're expressing it because you feel that you have to. You have to give input, or you have to comment, or you have to look intelligent. And then we just repeat what we've read. Not necessary. We don't have to have an opinion on anything, nor do we have to share that opinion, because how many people are really looking for productive conversation? People are looking for a reaffirmation of what they think and believe. Do you need to comment? Do you need to have an opinion? And Divya, I'll come back to your question. So the idea is there are three transactions of life. We receive, and you'll see it in the diagram, from the world, we receive stimuli. And we receive the stimuli through our organs of perception. So you read in the news that there is a performance coming up. An artist is coming to town. Taylor Swift is in the city. I saw something today. There's a South African artist, Tyler. She's coming to Mumbai. Now that is something that you've read. All right? A pop singer is in town. Now, what is your reaction to the stimuli received? So you've received the stimuli. What is your reaction? And that reaction is by your mind and intellect. So you could have a strong reaction. Oh, wow, Taylor Swift, I love the music. Or I don't like the music. Whatever your reaction is based on the quality of your mind and intellect. And accordingly, you will respond into the world. Turn the page if not interested. If interested, book tickets. Straight away, call up friends. Let's make a plan. Let's go for this. Let's get the t-shirt, etc. Response into the world. Now, the responses into the world are based on the reaction. Now, depending what's in your inner personality, so your responses. So if you have lots of desires for Taylor Swift, for music, for concert experience, you're going to react to the stimuli that's there. So it's something like this. You've got a vessel, you're in a laboratory, and it's got some liquid inside, all right? and you pour another liquid, and because there's something inside this vessel, there's a reaction. It changes color, it produces smoke. But if there is nothing inside this vessel, you pouring stimuli of the world into this empty vessel, no reaction. So why do we react? Why do we react and therefore respond? Based on our likes and dislikes?
We are stimulated.
We are stimulated, okay? We've got something in the vessel.
We are not empty.
We're not empty. And that something in the vessel is the desires in our mind. And based on the desires in our mind, so our responses into the world. So the stronger the desires you have, the more desires you have, when you receive things from the world, you react to everything. And therefore respond to everything. And then get triggered by everything, get stimulated by everything. But if you have fewer content in the vessel, fewer desires in the mind, you react less. Or you have the opportunity where you do react, but your intellect is stronger than the mind. It can manage the desire and ensure that you do not have a strong response into the world. So either you don't have anything here, or your intellect manages the reaction. But if you have too much going on in your mind, we're going to react and we're going to respond into the world. And so the silence goes. So what is that that's creating the noise, the reaction, the smoke and the change in the color? It is the desires. The desires make the noise. Now we've learned from our sessions that the permanent way to reduce the noise is through the yogas. Find a higher goal. And when you pursue a higher goal, the lower desires start dropping away. You become more and more peaceful, you become quieter, your mind becomes more silent. Why? There are less thoughts in the mind. Therefore, less reactions, less responses into the world. What a state. You see everything so clearly because we're not jumping. We're not getting involved straight away. We're observing. Either because our intellect is strong or our desires are few. And we watch. And then we take a decision based on what we really want in life. We're clear, objective. In the same section that we discussed earlier, chapter 17, we spoke about austerity of speech. So what is austerity of mind? Austerity of mind, they give various qualities. So how not to use up your mental energy, how to conserve mental energy. And the quality that they give for this is Maunam, being silent. So to conserve mental energy is to be quiet, not to react. So the freedom from reaction is one way of conserving energy. But when we get upset, when we get emotional, when we get agitated, we are using up unnecessary energy that could be redirected for our goals. When you enter a discussion and you find that the discussion is not productive, the person does not really want to hear your opinion, does not really want to change their mind, is not open to a discussion. You've heard their point of view, it's a discussion, discussing points, but the person is not really listening. Josh Billing says, just be quiet. Why? Because silence is the hardest argument to refute. How do you argue with silence? How do you argue if a person is keeping quiet? But we want to engage. We want to have the last word. Where is that word coming from? Ego. It's coming from, I must impose my view. I must make sure I win the debate. Silence is probably the most effective. So let us save our energy by not getting agitated, by not reacting to everything, by becoming more and more introverted. This is internal silence. Now we reach the absolute silence of the pure consciousness. And the absolute silence is the absence of thought completely. A person went up to a guru, an enlightened soul, and said, where do I find the truth? Where do I find reality? And what an answer the great soul gave. He said, look between two thoughts. Okay? Look between two thoughts. So now our thoughts are flowing so quickly, one after the other after the other. And not just that, we have many, many desires, so many, many thoughts. So we can't stop the flow anywhere and pull the thoughts apart and go down and find the substratum, the pure consciousness. So we miss it. But suppose you could slow it down, bring the thought flow finer and finer, thinner and thinner, from a flood to a river, to a stream, to a little trickle. And then drop by drop, titration. You're separating it and you will be able to see the riverbed, the base, the substratum. If you see this diagram, it shows on the x-axis, you've got thoughts. All right, so you've got thought A represented as a wave. And then you got thought B also represented as a wave, an experience. The x-axis represents the substratum, the consciousness on which thought is enlivened. That is the reality. Now, we don't know the reality. We don't experience the reality because we're caught up in perception, emotion, thought. So we see the thought, but we don't see what's behind the thought. The spiritual path is about quietening the mind, lessening the thought flow, to get to a point where you bring the thoughts, and this is the practice of meditation, where you have very few thoughts. So meditation is the last stage of the spiritual path. And the purpose of meditation is to take those few thoughts and bring it to single-pointed focus, one thought, usually the chant, the sound, the mantra of Om, and you're repeating it, but you don't repeat it constantly. Om, 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 Om. It's Om, silence. Om, silence. Om, silence. So the sound merges from the silence, Om, merges back into the silence. And it represents thought. Thought is merging from the pure consciousness and then dying and dissolving back into the pure consciousness. And in the practice of meditation, with the sound, with the thought, you bring it and leave it in silence. You don't repeat the thought, you just leave it in silence. And in that silence, that absence of thought, that absence of sound, if your practice is successful, you experience the self, the spirit, the reality. You've clinched it, you've got it. You self-realized. So the whole path is from being silent outside. How? by watching what we say, by watching what noise we produce, but also creating silence in our lives. That quiet time in the morning, let that be yours. Showing up a few minutes early to the different activities and meetings that we have, so we have some silence to ourselves. So we give the opportunity. And the most powerful silence is just the pause before we act, before we respond. Because in that pause, we have the ability to go within. This is external silence. Internal silence is the mind, where we become aware of our reactions, we become aware of our desires. And with awareness of the intellect, we try and lessen those reactions. We try and lessen the extroversion, the need to go outside, the dependence to go outside, and to be sufficient, self-entertained, content with our own company. Doesn't mean you don't go outside, you don't go and visit places, but you don't need to. Now, if you don't do that, we're even more agitated. And as the thoughts become silent, we get to a stage where we can practice meditation and reach the absolute silence, the absolute witness, the self, the spirit. And from the balcony of the self, you watch thoughts, emotions, and perceptions just functioning like an actor on the stage. The absolute objectivity of going to the innermost part of your personality, but also the bliss and peace of that silence. Thereafter, it doesn't matter what you do, where you go, you could be in a marketplace, you could be in a pop concert, you will always be silent because it's from within. Okay. Questions? Go ahead, Lydia.
You mentioned that what is the need for reaction when you see something, when you read something? Why can't you be free from reaction? I just want to understand. Let's say I'm in a public space, I've come with family to a club, food is being ordered, the waiter makes a mistake. My husband just gives it off to him. And like I feel like telling him it's not a big deal, just back off. But he's just going on and on and on. Now, in a situation like this, how do you just back off? How do you not react?
Mm-hmm. So, it's interesting because actually both of you are reacting. So the husband is reacting to the poor service. He's got a desire for a minimum level of service. It doesn't meet that. He's frustrated, he's upset, he expresses it. Our desire, or your desire, is for the husband not to make a scene. Why is he getting upset? Why can't he just be peaceful? We have a desire for the husband to be quiet, accepting, silent. So we are reacting to our desire for somebody else not being silent. So in both cases, is there a need? And it does not mean that there's no response. You may correct a situation, but you don't do it from agitation. And the only way you cannot do it from an agitated point of view, so you can still pull up poor service, but you don't do it from anger. You don't do it because you are so livid. You are so upset that your blood pressure increases, you're upset. That means your desire has taken over there. And the same thing, we should not do it that we get so upset at the partner's behavior. Why do we get upset? We know that people misbehave or shout or raise their voices everywhere. But the attachment to my partner, I want my partner to behave a particular way. That's our desire. So we can also handle it in a different way, but we're also doing it from reaction.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, great.
I was wondering if it's really possible to suppress the reactions. What I'm listening here is that you have a reaction and you have to turn it into action. And that's the difficult path. So I'm not sure if it's possible to have no reaction. But the work here is to transform this reaction, automatic reaction, into an action, a,
Mm-hmm.
a quiet one. But having no reaction, I'm not sure if it's possible.
I hear you. So I'll give you an example, Astrid.
Mhm.
So today, South Africa beat India in the first Test cricket match. How do you feel about that? Exactly. And what is your response to that? Are you going to put on the television? Are you going to check the score? Exactly. So the receipt has come in. I've told you some news. Reaction is 0. Why? Because no desire. Response is 0. Response is there's no value for it. But for somebody who does follow the cricket, oh, South Africa won. Wow. If they have a value for it, they'll react. I didn't even know they were playing. Oh, I'm glad you told me, Sudhakar. Let me go and check the score. In fact, why am I here in this class? Let me go and check if they're showing the highlights. So it depends on how strong the desire is. So definitely, Astrid, we don't have to react to everything. We don't react to everything. But in certain areas where we have desires, what we want to do with the reaction is try and move the intensity of the reaction to be more intellect led rather than mind led. So if we react with our mind, we react with impulse, we react with emotion. It's a reflex. But we have the opportunity at that stage, at reaction stage, the intellect has the ability to say, is it a good idea to respond like this? Is it a good idea to reply like this? Would it be productive to pull up or correct the person in public? So the intellect starts thinking, okay, mind, I know you're feeling upset, you're feeling angry, but let's weigh up the pros and cons of this. And then ultimately, what you respond will depend on this conversation between your mind and intellect. Now, if the intellect is not there, we go straight from impulse to action, response. But if the intellect is there, the response could even be decision not to act, which is also an action.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I was in Delhi when the bomb blast happened,
Okay.
and I was maybe about 25 minutes away from actually where it happened. And then when all the facts came out in the news, and of course in the newspapers and all, so I did have a reaction. I mean, and especially people who had another opinion about it. And so I couldn't help myself but react to that. So is it that maybe I shouldn't be listening to so much of the political news or get involved in it because I identify myself, my to a certain ideology or whatever. So how do I handle that?
So, Sangeeta, to decide how much of the world you need, it really depends on what are the goals that you set for your life? So you would need, so for instance, if you're a doctor, you need to be in touch with the latest advancements in your field. So you would need to do that research, you need to receive that news. If you are traveling to Delhi, you would definitely need to know the news of Delhi, which areas to avoid, which areas are challenging, whether flights are going to be delayed. So we definitely need a minimum level. But if you're working on yourself, there is very little that you need to keep in touch with the world. Because of, so I'm in this field where it's constant work on myself, but because I'm also interacting with all of you, I think there are about 20 countries in our class today, I need to be able to relate. So I do the minimum. What I need to know, what's happening in the Czech Republic, just a little bit, just so that I can have some background when people speak to me. That's about it, nothing more than that. So it really depends on what is your goal. And if you find it not connected to your goal, it's a hindrance. You don't need it. Focus on what you've decided to do. The reaction that you've had is because of, naturally, people were hurt. You identify with the people, you identify with the country, so there is a reaction. Now, what is the best way to express the reaction, the concern, the care? That we have to think. So perhaps, depending on who it is, it might be better not to express an opinion to some people. And where we can assist, maybe there we can get involved. But then again, check with your goal. What is your goal? Because to what extent do we go down these different reactions that happen? So that's why your goal or your ideal in life becomes that guiding principle. But so just this is to the group. So if you have a question, because then we benefit from the Q&A.
Yes, Hari Om. So my question is that I get where, most of the time you should be silent if you have nothing to say. But in the workplace, it's all about also conversation and networking, um, talking about sports or talking about whatever it is happening in the world. So how do you keep that balance between being silent, probably hearing more than you speak, as you said, but also making the others feel welcome that yes, you do want to connect with them. But yeah, keeping that balance where, you don't feel lost in your thoughts.
Sure. So often we have to engage with other people, sometimes just to create a team environment or a conducive environment for work or for a productive work relationship. So the conversation topics that we choose and why we choose or why we say what we say, it's interesting to go into those intentions. And that's what today is about. So if you're clear that your intention is to make the person feel welcome, make the person feel at ease in the environment, so then yes, engage. What do you engage about? For instance, we've been mentioning, about talking about yourself. Is it highlighting the ego? But sometimes when you share about yourself, then the person feels more open to share about themselves. So if you're doing it with the intention of helping the other person or making the person feel more at ease, by all means, it's helpful to the task. So that is fine. And Perhaps the best way to disarm a person is by getting them to find out or talk about what they're interested in. Kishore.
So a question regarding thinking, like sometimes I go into chain of thoughts. It's kind of a noise, like about the past, about something. If somebody said something bad to me, normally I don't react. So that when I'm in a quiet phase, I keep thinking about how to get rid of that thing.
About thoughts of the past, particularly?
Yeah. Yes.
So, Kishore, it's not easy, and it does require this development of the intellect. And the general advice to develop the intellect is we make some time for it, preferably in the mornings with a structured course of content to develop this intellect. That's what the study of Vedanta is. So that half an hour in the morning, a little bit of reading and reflection, it makes the intellect available and aware. But since you asked specifically about the past, these few perspectives might help your intellect, which is, first of all, let us be aware that when we are ruminating in the past, it is not productive at all. The past is dead. It has no bearing, it has no usefulness because it takes us away from the living moment where all potential, all life happens. Is the past useless? No. There are lessons from the past. So if you find these issues are recurring or those incidents of the past are recurring, bring them to the light and make a time for it. And say, okay, I'm going to discuss or I'm going to analyze this particular event and find out what are the lessons to take from that past event, or it could be a trauma, or it could be even something positive. Take the lessons and then close it. And it's not to say that it won't come up again, but when it does come up again, you can tell your mind, we've dealt with this. There is no need to bring this up again. I've taken what I need to. Thank you. And close it. I hope that helps. PLSG team, last question.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so actually, my question was continuous of this question, the last question. Yes, it's happened to me too, but I bring it in, I discuss, and I thought it's clear, it's gone, but constantly it comes back in front of me. What is that? I feel it. I am. It's not under my control, and I don't want to challenge it too. But it comes, and when it comes to me, and I'm gonna say, okay, we discuss, we talk. That is dead. There is no exist. But constantly it comes back,
Yes.
and it looks like it make me frustrated because I feel like I don't have any control on it. And this is one question I have. And the other question may be somehow related to this. I do mindfulness meditation, and I don't have any problem with by myself. I am alone. I live alone. But I'm okay to be alone and I don't have any problem. I had a problem in the past, but I'm okay now, completely fine. I feel it. I'm aligned with myself, be alone. But the thoughts, it's back to me. Even this morning when I was when you were talking, I tried to close my eyes to more concentrate, but then I noticed I missed, for example, 1 or 2 minutes of your thought, and my mind went some other place.
Okay.
You know how I can do put this one or train myself to be in now. Thank you so much.
Okay. So the nature of the mind is that it does not like to be in the present. It goes to the past, it goes to the future, it wanders around. So, as you mentioned, even in this class, to have been with me for every word, If 60% of you followed every word, or even 20% have followed every word, thank you very much. It's not easy. The mind gets distracted. It's the nature of the mind to wander. Everybody's mind, including those of us who've been in this field for years, decades. That's the nature of the mind. So unless our intellect is strong enough to keep the mind where we want it, the mind is going to wander. When the intellect keeps the mind on the task that you've chosen, that is called concentration. So when you say you want to improve your concentration, it means I need my intellect to be strong enough to keep it where I want it to be. Now, there are a few things that could help not going back to the past or not thinking so much about the future. And these few things are this. We go to regrets. We go to things where we've been hurt because the mind gets a kind of self-pity. It gets a kind of negative pleasure from going through these things. Or if it's positive, they just keep on reliving that particular experience. So one thing that might help is set a goal that inspires you. And the idea of this goal is because you are well utilized pursuing that goal and your mind wants to be there, it's much easier to keep your mind there. But if it is idle, if it has no activity to do, it's going to go back to where it was getting that negative pleasure, the past, regret, or future anxiety. So first thing, set a higher goal. Second thing, perhaps lay out a schedule for yourself. Even now that you're staying with yourself, where you give an activity for the mind to do through the day. And it could be rest. Rest could also be an activity. All right. So it's not distracting the mind, but it's giving the mind a place to be, to think about. So it doesn't go to where its desires and attachments are, because that's when it starts circulating on the past and the future. So a schedule and a higher goal will not solve the problem. It will make it easier for your intellect to bring the mind back to where it needs to be. But the ultimate solution is develop your intellect. So thank you, everybody, for joining us this week. We have 2 more classes before we close the Sunday Wisdom sessions. We're going to have one global talk on the 7th of December. And it's geared towards the youth, but since all of you are young at heart, you are invited. And the topic will be Go for Gold. So something inspiring for all of us.